So here in Portland, Oregon, and bear in mind, I really love Portland. There's a lot of stupid people who live here, but I really do love Portland, Oregon. Um, we got some neat stuff that happens here, cyclically, annually, etc., etc. One of them's there's a soapbox derby race up at Mount Tabor. I've caught it a few different times. Once it was really neat. I still call her Stella. Somebody gave me a free guitar on the way home. It's beating the shit. It's a camping guitar is how I think of it. A beater. But yeah, that happened one of those days. And we got a naked bike ride. The reason I mentioned those two events and the Swifts, I take that back. There's a school on the western side of Portland, if memory serves me. Some of you guys know these things if you live here or you've heard about Portland or you visited. There's a chimney, and it's where a bunch of the birds, the swifts, nest. And annually they come out and they perform, geometric patterns that, pseudo-intellectuals would probably say sacred geometry in the sky. And people sit on the grassy knoll and have a little picnic and watch the birds. And it's really fucking neat. But I've never been there officially, and it's one of these things I've meant to do so many times over, and it just has never happened. Either way, those are the three things here in Portland that I never remember when they take place. I kind of remember the gist of it, etc., etc., etc. Either way, that's my long preface to, here's a video that I left online quite a while ago. The reason I'm highlighting this is our masters they're manipulating you and I. This should be the age of information because this is what we were told. The internet should be an information superhighway because that's how it was sold. But neither of those are true. This is the age of disinformation and patently fascist censorship, which is to say third-party platforms which stand outside the jurisdiction of what? Can you answer the question if your life depended on it? The Constitution, maybe? And, freedom of speech and things we should be fighting for, if you and I are surrounded by smart people, but then again, things are falling apart, which would suggest the opposite. In fact, it proves beyond a reasonable doubt that you and I are not surrounded by smart people. That's why things are bad. This video I left online a while ago. I had no idea that it had 8,360 views because I'm censored, and I don't usually get notifications. For some reason, and this is why I saw it today, 2 hours ago and 2 hours ago, for some reason this video is being circulated from God knows whenever I posted it. So I said, there's a reason why I clicked record. And you could also, you can compare and contrast all the things I already rattled off if you use your brain. Most people aren't willing to do that. And it also has to do with the fact that our masters are distracting us left and right. Bad pun. They're also polarizing us, and they're doing away with attention spans. These things are also divisive. That's also why I keep sidestepping what I'm talking about to prove a point, because there's a method to my madness. When you scroll, now we're thinking about Google. Are you with me? You got the feed where you're spoon-fed shit at the top. And when you scroll to look for something, if you step away and you're distracted, would you agree that it would probably drag you back to the top of the stack? Back to the top of the slush pile? I mean, your feed? I mean, the propaganda mill? It didn't used to do that. Would you also agree, if you hadn't looked away and you do keep scrolling, you will probably hit something that will, that you and I could describe as resistance. In other words, there's quite literally a sign that whoever is writing the algorithm is actively creating something that is resisting people finding information. In other words, you might hit something that says, see more anyway, when you used to be able to just look for information freely. Or there's also lag when you scroll. Say you're scrolling and then all of a sudden it's buffering. It's buffering for some reason, like on Instagram, which is LifeLog 2.0. Why would it buffer? This is supposedly, we were told, and sold and urged to repeat that 5G is fucking awesome, when in fact it functions under short condensed bursts, which are less efficient than its predecessors, because it's not what you and I were told it is. We're building a digital prison for social credit slavery. But heaven forbid people think within these parameters. That's also why, and I should bleed into this, the blue check mark, the verification process, in place to normalize the incremental steps towards social credit slavery. What the fuck do I know? Other examples include, but are not limited to, what? Again, can you answer these if your life depended on it? Internet babies, superficial internet babies, people who were born yesterday, and or people who are older than me who bought into this shit and don't spell words correctly, crap out emojis, and are more than willing to march in lockstep with their horse blinders on. You know, gullible people. What do? They bought into referring to themselves as influencers, and or they bought into media being rebranded as content, which, you know, would be a digital commodity, because these things have to do with incremental steps towards social credit slavery. Digital currency, AI, these are other aspects of a greater agenda, none of which is in place to benefit you and I. Back to point. Portland naked bike ride. This is not the official one. And I clicked on it. It's just 5G is amazing. TikTok's awesome.
By the way,
there we go. Yeah? I posted this a very, very long time ago. So if I'm right, this video from fuck knows when has been circulated to 2 people this many days later. Just like when you scroll through Google and you experience lag, if you were to keep going, if you stuck at it and you weren't distracted and you chipped away at it, and I've done this, by the way, you can find some of the things that reflect reality still hidden at the bottom of the stack, buried on Google. Here's another example to prove that what I'm telling you today is in fact fucking true, and it's one of the many tactics that our masters have employed. And what I usually will tell people is our master's tactics aren't terribly clever, but they are effective, especially when you and I are surrounded by gullible people who are more than willing to fight for propaganda, entertainment. Those two are synonymous. They run hand in hand. Again, if you were born yesterday or you're older than me and you bought into this shit. So what's the other example? Can you guys tell me what it is? Do any of you know what it is? Anybody? Anybody? I want you to think about it. I've highlighted that when you scroll down, you experience lag time. Yeah? And most likely, when you leave things online that reflect reality, and or people should see them, this isn't the best example, mind you, of videos, that is, it might just be, shopped around days and days and days later. And or maybe a year later, which is fucking terrifying. The other example is when you go through a comment section and you leave something in there that, people should consider, that might run contrary because standards and balances, checks and balances, rather, logic be damned. People should, they should be familiar with. They should be thinking in terms of, because the fact is they should be thinking. Your comment's probably going to fall to the bottom of the stack and or be hidden and or be challenged. And if it's challenged on TikTok, that means that you're going to have less reach. Reach is also the opposite of freedom of speech. Community guidelines is the opposite of freedom of speech. The fact that all these platforms are third-party apps, and this is something that is actively censored on TikTok, I'm speaking from experience, that's the opposite of freedom of speech. These are all examples of fascism, for lack of better words, and if you're a pseudo-intellectual who waxes poetic about semantics and all that other garbage, you can think of it as something that falls under the banner, or the umbrella, if you prefer, of totalitarianism. Either way, none of this is in place to serve the public. None of this benefits you and I. None of this would stand if you and I were surrounded by smart people truly fucking fighting for what matters. But that's not the case now, is it? What the fuck do I know?